Mason,
Yeah.
you and I were talking the other night, friends gathering, that kind of thing, but I'd never really heard a lot about your story. And as you started telling me about it, I became more and more fascinated by it. And finally, at some point, I stopped you and I said, hang on a second, man. You gotta save the rest of that.
Yeah.
I gotta get you in the studio
Yeah.
and we'll talk about it some more. So you're a very talented musician.
Thank you.
What all do you play? Do you play more than one instrument?
I'm mostly a keyboard player.
Okay.
I can sing a bit, mostly backing other people up, not really a front man, but I could play and then, sing and harmonize behind people.
Yeah.
That's primarily it. I mean, I could sort of do, play a simpler stuff on bass, and I can play drums as well, but
Okay.
I never made any money playing those instruments. It's always been keyboards.
Okay.
And then done some music production and stuff too.
Okay. So, and it was I guess your past life as a keyboard player that intrigued me so much. So you were telling me that you were part of a gospel, you were the keyboard player for a evangelist,
Yeah.
a traveling
Right.
evangelist. So you guys would go to small towns and do the revivals and that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, it was a whole lifestyle. I read Dan Barker's books, and he tells his story. He was doing it in the 70s, but he tells his story as a preaching, songwriting, traveling evangelist, kind of almost a church planter guy.
Okay.
But I guess I don't know for sure that he planted churches, but I related so much to all of that because I lived in that world, like hoping that the love offering was a good one, which would get you to the next one, hoping that the love offering was good there. And yeah, I mean, I can go into more detail, but that was basically, I mean, the whole time I was in college, I was taking time off to do that.
Wow.
And all summer long I was doing that, and then I would miss some class to do that.
So how did you get into that?
Right. So I grew up in central Kentucky, on a dairy farm, pretty rural. It was a small town, maybe 7,000 people back then. And my dad just had a passion for music, and I'm sure my dad will come up more as I tell my story, but he had a passion for music and went to college for music. And so he just made sure that his children had music lessons, right?
Okay.
So when I was 7 years old, I started taking piano lessons literally with like the church lady, a few miles away. And I just took to it really well.
Okay.
Like I was just kind of naturally precocious and took to the piano. And within a couple years, my teacher told my parents that I needed to go to a different teacher, like a master teacher is her words.
Like he's learned everything that I can teach him, and now he's ready for more advanced?
Sort of like that. It's more like he has enough natural talent that he really needs to be pushed by a professional master teacher.
Okay.
And so what I ended up doing was when I was about 8 or 9, I took lessons from my piano teacher's teacher. That's what
Okay.
happened. Yeah. And so my parents were so dedicated because that teacher was an hour away. So they would drive me an hour away to that piano teacher. And then even my younger brother and my younger sister both did the same thing. So my parents just, on a dairy farmer's income,
Yeah.
they invested in that music education.
Wow.
Right. So, and I was homeschooled too. So when you're homeschooled, you can make practicing piano a part of your daily curriculum.
Okay.
So I had an advantage that a lot of kids don't have, which is that I really did practice almost every day.
Right.
Every weekday. So anyway, that's how I started learning piano. And from the age of like 7 to maybe 13,
Yeah.
it was just classical piano lessons from the classical piano teacher.
Okay.
And I was doing really well and everything. But what happened was there was a guitar player at church when I was about 14. And he was really, really talented. And he kind of started to teach me, here's how you can play by ear. Here's how you can not just be stuck to the notes on the page, but you can just play a song by putting chords together. And it just kind of taught me some of that vocabulary, basically like a rock vocabulary.
Okay.
And man, that ignited my passion for it. So
Okay.
I was about 14, because before that it was just this thing I had to do. But at that point, I thought, this is great. This
You're like,
is
"Now,
fun.
well, I've already got the skill, and now somebody's shown me the freedom to kind
The
of
freedom.
explore.
The freedom part is what made me fall in love with it, right?
Okay.
Because up until that point, I was good, but I didn't see it. Didn't fill me with passion or anything. But around
Okay.
14, man. So then I really took off. So I started playing at my local church when I was 14, and then I did go to college for music when I was 17, and there'll be more story about that. But in college, I was playing in jazz groups. I was still playing in churches and like music director at churches and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And then just playing random gigs, wedding bands, party bands, the whole thing.
Yeah.
And traveling with this minister that we'll talk about soon.
Okay.
But that
So I guess
Yeah.
the playing in church at 14, what led you and what put you in connection with this?
Yeah, I'll tell you what happened. So by the time I was about 16, I was good enough to, kind of be known around that small town and to be hired a little bit. It's not like there's tons of gigs in that town in Kentucky, but
Sure.
there was a guy coming in from Nashville to do a couple of meetings at this local church, and he needed a local band. So he was a singer and a piano player a little bit, and he put a band together: drums, bass, guitar,
Yeah.
and keyboards. And the drummer knew me and recommended me. And so I'm 16 years old, and I'm the hired gun keyboard player for this evangelist guy. It's not the guy we're talking about. It's his friend. So I played for him and learned these songs, and I just loved it. Like, I was so passionate about it. And I sat that guy down, and I said, this is what I want to do with my life right here. This is it. I want to play music I don't know the exact vocabulary I used, but I wanted to be basically an sidekick to an evangelist piano player, going out there winning souls, that thing.
Yeah.
And I told this guy that, and he went back home to Nashville, and he had a really good friend. And that friend of his was literally looking for a young piano player,
Okay.
right, to kind of be his right-hand man, sidekick, and travel with.
Okay.
And so it was this total God thing, man. Total God thing.
As they say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
as they say. So he went home and told his friend about me. That guy called me, and I just made the most of it. Wrote him a handwritten letter, said, this is what I feel called to do. Recorded myself playing on a cassette tape.
Sure.
Mailed it all to him. And that initiative, I think, really meant something to him.
Cassette tapes for our younger audience are what was before CDs. And
Right. Yeah.
I'm sure they'll remember those.
Exactly. So anyway, he literally drove halfway from Nashville to my hometown, and me and my mom and dad drove halfway, and we met in Bowling Green, Kentucky, at a Shoney's.
Yeah.
And they got to know each other a little bit, and then I left with him, and that weekend I played with him in some church in Missouri or something.
Wow.
But that was it. I was 16. That's how it started.
And it's not like you got talked into it. You pursued it.
Oh, I pursued
at
it.
a young age and said, I really feel led to do this.
Absolutely, right. And it wasn't a sneaky back door either. I mean,
Sure.
I wanted to be a full-time musician.
Yeah, yeah.
But at that point, it was really important to me that I wasn't just chasing gigs.
Yeah.
It was really important to me that I was doing something that mattered.
Yeah, this
with
had
my music skills.
this had meaning and purpose and value, and much more so than just putting on a performance. You felt like you were doing something that needed to be done.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. Exactly.
All
It was
right.
a mission.
How long did you do that?
Well, let's see. I met him when I was 16, and we kind of had a bit of a falling out, I would say, when I was about, I think, 23.
Years later.
And we recovered from the falling out, but it was many, many years.
Wow.
That's 7, right? And
at that age, that's a forever.
it's all through college and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this guy really, his name's David, and he really became kind of a mentor as well. He was 10 years older than me, not exactly a father figure, but definitely like, kind of a mentor or a big brother figure in my life. And just kind of my spiritual leader too, you know.
Okay.
So yeah, all through college, before and after. I actually moved to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania to work full time for that ministry after college. And still, that was me being mission minded. This is what
Yeah.
I'm called to do.
Wow. So just to fast forward, and then I'll probably jump back into it because
Sure.
I have specific questions about that.
Yep.
But so what got you out of it? What was the end of that?
Well, since I met him when I was 16, we definitely developed a bit of that. I don't want to say father-son dynamic, but it was like definitely a mentor-mentee dynamic. He's 10 years older than me. And I think part of it is when I was about 23 years old, I'm coming to my own as my own, my own man. And we just butted heads on a lot of things, right? Like I was in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania to work for that ministry, but he didn't really need full-time music work all the time. He needed people to help with the ministry, like literally stamping letters, and I was fine with all of that, but stamping letters and working with him in the office a couple days a week and helping to send out his kind of fundraising newsletters and all of this, and the two of us just started to not work together very well that closely, you know?
Sure.
Yeah. And yeah, it wasn't really related to any kind of religious change of heart.
Okay. So the end.
It was before that.
So the end of that partnership, so to speak, was not because of the end of your faith or anything like that.
No.
It was just two guys both in the faith, but just not working well together.
Yeah, just how relationships sour.
Sure.
I remember one time towards the end, but I mean, he's still a friend of mine and we play music together sometimes. But one time towards the end of that main part of our relationship, I was like 15 minutes late to a Sunday morning service. We had to be there like 7 a.m. And it was because the guy that was carpooling with me was late. And so then he told me like, hey man, you're late. And we just sort of got into it, and it was so awkward, like me literally biting back.
Yeah.
And in front of like the the assistant guy at the church who was letting us in, and it was just weird for us to bicker and argue like that.
Sure.
So it was just a souring of the relationship.
I hear you.
Yeah.
All right. So kind of getting back into it a little bit. So when you were doing that, and you obviously felt, like you said, you felt called to do it. You felt like it was kind of your mission in life. But you knew that music can draw an emotional response from people. You and I talked before about, you knew that you were intentionally setting the tone at certain times in order to get certain responses out of the
Right.
audience.
Right.
Did that feel disingenuous to you, or did you start to look at these things? During that time, if you had watched another performance, would you have said, yeah, I bet he's getting ready to come in with the emotional notes and the emotional...
Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, that's the thing about this world. It's like we know that music is very powerful in an emotional way.
Yeah.
We also know that you can use that emotion even outside of like a religious context. Like every time you play a beautiful chord and people kind of get the goosebumps, that's not, I did not believe that was the Holy Spirit every time.
Sure.
It was an emotion.
Yeah.
And so the way I described it was, we are making music that affects people's emotions, and God can use that. You see?
okay.
So it wasn't, we are going to manipulate everyone now.
Right.
It wasn't that. It was, we are setting a tone and an environment that makes people receptive.
Yeah.
And that God can move in that environment.
Okay.
So I wouldn't have said I was manipulating, but I would have said that I'm setting a tone. Yeah.
Okay.
And for those who, maybe aren't familiar with this world, what happens is a preacher and a musician, it's usually a piano player, they work together so much that they literally know where they're going. Like it becomes this incredible partnership where I can tell that he's about to take it somewhere that's more exciting and upbeat. And so I'll go there, I'll follow him. Or he's about to completely pivot to be more of a somber, worshipful atmosphere, and I will take it there. And you learn all this musical vocabulary to get you there, right?
Yeah.
But it's more than just background music. It's background music creating this musical narrative around the preacher's narrative.
Right.
And it's really powerful.
Right.
Like I can sit in a service like that right now and be moved.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Sure.
It's really powerful. But we weren't out there to be dishonest or manipulate, but we did know that, hey, we were making things happen
Right.
emotionally. Yeah.
It's almost when I hear you describing this, because you're listening to him speak. Obviously, you're listening to the message, and like you said, you can tell.
And I'm watching what's happening out there too, in the crowd.
And so you can kind of tell what's going on, and then you're just kind of setting the tone as you see what is developing and where he's taking the message, which is I totally get that. My wife and I one time were riding down the road, and we were listening to classical music, and she started giggling, and I was like, "Hey, well, what's up?" She's like, "Man, as this music is playing, I almost feel myself watching a cartoon." And so as the music's playing, I'm envisioning different things happening in the cartoon.
Oh, yeah.
Like Tom and Jerry, as the music got real fast, they were chasing each other around the corner. And then, when it got real somber, it's like, ooh, something ominous is about to happen.
Yeah.
So,
that's right.
She was doing the opposite. She was listening to the music and then filling in the blanks, but you were listening to the message and then providing the accompanying music to, go with the tone and all that. So,
Right.
So obviously you spent a lot of time, many years in that. You and I know each other because of our lack of faith. Mm-hmm. So tell me about that transition.
Yeah. I'm trying to think how far back to go. I mean, I didn't have any real chinks in my faith armor. That's the way I always say it, chinks in the armor, right? I didn't really have any of those until I was around that same time, maybe 23, 24.
Okay.
But like I said, that wasn't the reason that relationship soured. But it was around that time that I started to not believe things that I believed before. And I'll tell you what that first domino was in a moment. But I wanted to go even further back because my dad taught me to be a real critical thinker.
Okay.
And he had a bachelor's degree. I think he double majored in theology and philosophy.
Okay.
And he kind of comes from the Jesus movement of the 70s, kind of that hippie Christian movement.
Yeah.
He was in that world and just had a real passion for it and wanted to get educated about it. He had a whole library of books back in his room, mostly theology, but philosophy and everything. So he was not afraid of questions.
Okay.
And he encouraged me to ask questions, right? He encouraged me to really study the Bible, but also go to school. He wanted me to get my doctorate in music. So he was all about education, and he would encourage any questions that I had. And it was always, the joke was I would ask him a question and I would want an answer, and he would give me about 3 books to read.
Okay.
I didn't read all 3 books, but
Sure.
that was his response to difficult questions was, okay, here's some books you can read about it, right?
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people have a different experience where they're discouraged from those questions, and it's just have faith, don't ask so many questions. It wasn't like that for me.
Right. And be careful what you think about and don't think about it in that
Right.
way. Here's the answer and go with it.
My dad was never like that.
Wow.
So he encouraged the thinking, the questioning, and the education especially. And I'm a real systematic thinker too. So I always had a real systematic understanding of my theology and my philosophy and my morals and everything. It was really like Lego pieces all fitting together.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a long way of saying I questioned a lot of things the whole time, but I just always had a good answer.
Okay.
And I'll tell you, when my answers started to not work anymore, I think I was around 23, 24. And the first one was I noticed that prayer didn't seem to really change anything.
Remember you telling me that.
It would make you feel good sometimes. And it feels really good to pray with other people, as long as someone doesn't drone on forever. But it feels really good to 2 minutes, hold hands, pray, center yourself on what's about to happen.
Yeah.
I think that's really human, and it feels good, right?
Sure.
And then lots of people pray as a form of meditation, which feels good. But I just noticed that when I prayed for things to happen, it was a total crapshoot if it was going to happen or not.
Sure.
Right? And we have all these reasons. God's going to do what God's going to do. He has his mysterious ways. But part of what we haven't talked about yet is that David was a part of the Word of Faith movement, which is a movement that emphasizes that faith is kind of a force. They wouldn't say that it's a force separate from God, but they would say faith is kind of its own force, and words are the container of that force. And so by using certain words, you are showing that you have a certain kind of faith. And if you have a certain kind of faith, all the stuff in the Bible is going to happen, right?
Okay.
So if you have faith to be healed, you'll be healed. If you have faith to be rich, you'll be rich. See? So that's the Word of Faith movement. And I just kind of saw that it wasn't working. And luckily, David would never say the reason it's not working is because you don't have enough faith. I think a lot of people actually do fall into that trap.
Right.
Oh, the reason I'm sick, it's my fault. I don't have enough faith. But David never stressed that, thankfully. And I certainly never believed that. But I just, my girlfriend at the time, she had an uncle who had polio, and this was the most faith-filled, godly, amazing man I'd ever met.
Right.
And he was never healed.
Right.
And I said, this math does not add up. If anybody has enough faith to be healed, it's this guy. He's not healed. Therefore, I don't think prayer does what we're saying it does.
And that gnawed at you for a while.
Yeah, I mean, none of this was instant. My deconversion experience, it was probably at least 4 years.
Okay.
And it was very intellectual, piece by piece, lots of reading. Yeah.
Right. Wow. So, were you, when you went through that deconstruction process, were you already married at the time?
Yeah, I was actually married and divorced twice in my 20s.
Okay.
And, if really, I think kind of the Christian sexual ethic is really a big part of why that happened. Because, first of all, I am a very relationship-oriented person. I want to fall in love. I want a family. I want, to be committed and all of that. But then there's that added pressure of, if you love this person and you want to be with this person, then you marry this person.
Right.
Period.
Right.
And you don't want to live in sin, and you don't want to play house, right?
Absolutely.
And so I met a girl at a youth camp, and me and David were playing, and she was out there, and I think I was 18 and she was 17. So we dated for 3 years. Is that math right? Yeah, about 3.5 years, and we got married. And that was the right thing to do. And we saved ourselves, and it was just a matter of, can I make it till she graduates from college so that we can get married?
Okay.
And that's what we did.
All right.
And, maybe that's a story for another time, but, that marriage soured after about 2.5 years. You know? So right around the same time. So the relationship with David soured, and with my wife soured, and then some of the dominoes started to fall in my faith all at the same time.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Okay.
right around 24.
A very
Around 24.
tumultuous time.
Yeah. And then I'll keep this one brief, but then about a year and a half after that, I met another woman, and we fell in love, and it was the same thing. And she moved to Nashville with me, and I'll have to tell that story maybe another time.
Yeah.
But she moved to Nashville with me, and we actually were under a lot of pressure to get married, because I was playing piano at a church at that point. And if anybody found out that, my girlfriend was basically living with me, is not going to be good.
Right.
And so we kind of just got married as soon as possible so that whole thing would go away.
Wow.
So twice I got married because it's what you're supposed to do.
Right. We have very similar stories in that way. I was married once in my early 20s, mainly because of pressure, because I was living with my girlfriend. I went to see my parents.
Can't do that.
Can't do it. And they convinced me that the creator of the universe was really pissed at Gary in Tennessee for doing what a young man, would do. And, regardless of how good of a person I was or how hard I was working or whatever, you're doing this thing and it's terrible and you got to fix it. And so next thing you know, we're planning a wedding and getting married.
Yep.
And then we're young and we're really getting to know each other as a married couple. And it, the more we knew each other, the more that it was very clear that we weren't meant to be lifelong partners and, that kind of thing. But yeah, we share that in common and that we got pressured into it. And we're both relationship people. I'm not a single kind of guy.
Yeah,
I'm meant to be in a relationship, so.
And I really pressured myself too. I mean,
sure,
there were a few people in my life that would be kind of like, you guys need to get married if you're gonna be acting like you're married. That was always what it is. If you're gonna act like you're married, get married.
Right.
But I put it on myself because I was the guy, even in high school, I was the guy that could sort of follow all these rules. I could be a good Christian. I could, save myself till marriage. I could be the same at school as I am at church.
Sure.
Right. And I took a lot of pride in that, kind of, follow me as I follow Christ. That's something that I could almost say without being
feeling like a hypocrite or anything.
Or feeling like a hypocrite.
Yeah.
Right. So I put it on myself. Like, this is not right. You are the person that does right. So fix this.
Right.
And just living with that tension was awful. So anyway, that my mid-20s were when a lot of things were falling apart.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, now I know you and Ashley, so when you guys got together, were you guys in similar places, or did you guys deconstruct separately or together, or?
No. Yeah. So skipping forward a little bit. Yeah. I guess that was about 4 years later. And I had deconstructed my faith very privately.
Okay.
Very,
very solo.
Yeah. Very solo, very privately.
Yeah,
that second relationship ended not because of the faith thing.
Sure.
And so even with her, like, she would, around that time, I was reading a lot of things that we'll get into in a minute, but she would hear me kind of talking about this, but that's not the reason the relationship ended. So it ended, and then I was single for a while, and I think the actual A word, the word atheist, I started using that vocabulary privately maybe a year after that. But the first person I told was Ashley, who I had met, and we started dating.
Yeah.
So we met, we started dating, we talked about going to church when we were kids. What kind of church did you go to? What kind of church did you go to? But, faith wasn't like a core part of what we were talking about. But when we got serious, I thought, I'm going to have to tell her.
Yeah.
And this is probably going to be the end of this relationship.
And at this point, you were you know what? I no longer believe. Now I consider myself to be an atheist.
I had never told anybody that, but privately, I had a very kind of a firm lack of belief. Yeah. And so we had been dating about 3 months, and I said, well, okay, I'm going to have this conversation. And I was traveling a lot back then, so we wrote emails to each other. And I wrote her that scary email.
Right.
And she was okay with it. She wasn't as far along in her deconstruction as I was, but she did have some of those same questions, and she was open-minded to, people with less belief or lack of belief or shaky belief. And to her, she wasn't dogmatic about, I've got to be with a sold-out Christian.
Sure.
And so it was okay for me to be a year or two ahead of her on that journey. And then I never really pushed her or anything, but she kind of came along that journey, a year or two behind me as we were getting together.
Yeah, and as you spend time together, you ask each other different questions. And
right.
What are your thoughts on this? And what are your thoughts on that? You kind of explore them together.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. Well, that's kind of that's a very interesting journey. I don't think very many people get that deep into their religious walk and lead services and that kind of thing. In your process of deconstruction, you mentioned that you had read some books.
Yeah.
What were the ones that stand out?
Well, yeah, kind of talking about the dominoes that fell. That first first domino was about prayer. And I remember the first time, because I used to get, pulled over for driving too fast. It doesn't happen so much anymore. But in my early 20s, I got several tickets.
Okay.
And every time, you and the Lord have a renewed relationship as soon as those lights come on, right? And so the lights come on and you're just praying, oh, Lord, get me out of this. Please get me out of this. That was stupid. Forgive
Sure.
me. I shouldn't have done that. If you get me out of this one, I'll drive better. And I remember the first time that I said, I'm not going to pray to get out of this speeding ticket. It's whatever's going to happen is going to happen, and me praying does not affect it in any way.
Okay.
Now, I still 100% believed everything. I just believed God's going to do what God's going to do, and me praying to get out of the speeding ticket is silly. And I didn't. And I remember making that choice to not pray in that way because I didn't think it worked anymore. So that was one domino. Another one was when I went through that divorce in my early 20s, I was playing in a wedding band, and there was this drummer, and me and him became really good friends, especially going through that relationship breakup, and he would also always ask me how I'm doing and really cared.
Yeah.
And this was a person who had a vague belief that there was one God, and that was it. His parents were Indian, and he was born in Pittsburgh, but he didn't have like a Hindu faith, but he didn't really have a Christian faith either. He just believed there's one God, and he doesn't really worry too much about it other than that.
Okay.
Well, on the inside, I'm thinking, you got to witness to this guy. This is someone who's going to go to hell. He's not a Christian. You've got to talk to him about this and get him saved.
Like, you got to get him closer to his one God.
Well, I got to get him saved. I got to make sure he says the sinner's prayer and accepts Jesus Christ as his personal Lord and Savior so that he doesn't go to hell.
So him believing that there was one God.
Not enough. Oh, no.
It was not good enough
Not
for you.
even close.
Okay. All right. Because he wasn't concerned about a personal relationship with that God.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't... he didn't acknowledge Jesus Christ as his Lord and Savior.
Okay.
You see? You can't just believe there's one God.
He was just kind of, there's a God out there.
There's just one. There's not 1,000 of them.
You're like, bro, you can't be so flippant about it.
No.
You got to move into this relationship.
Right, and he was such a great guy and such a great friend. Well, so the inner witness of the Holy Spirit was telling me that I got to talk to this guy.
Well, of course.
I could not bring myself to do it. And it's not because I was shy. Well, maybe a little, but I respected him so much, and he was such a great person and such a great friend to me that I couldn't bring myself to talk to him as if there was something wrong with him. Tell him that he was a sinner. Tell him that he was going to burn and that he had to change. He was a great person. He was my best friend in that town.
Right.
And I never treated him like that. And I talked to him very openly about what I believed, but I was never trying to sort of convert him. And that's another thing that hit me like, wait a minute, your best friend is not a Christian, and you are not trying to make him one, and you're okay with that somehow? Why are you okay with that?
Yeah.
So that was another domino that fell. But then I told you earlier it was a very intellectual deconversion.
Yeah.
Well, my dad was all about, studying the Bible and interpreting the Bible and how was the Bible formed and translated and how was the canon put together. So I was always fascinated with this stuff. I have a minor in religious studies along with my music degree. So I just started reading. So I started reading Bart Ehrman, and he's a scholar of the Bible just from a historical perspective. I don't think he has an axe to grind for atheism, but he's also not afraid to say this is something that scholars have known about for hundreds of years, but no one tells you in Sunday school.
Right.
Yeah. So I read probably 4 or 5 of his books. I read all 4 of the 4 horsemen of the new atheism books. Read all 4 of those, and then I read Dan Barker as well, he's kind of a bit of a hero of mine, partially because of his piano playing, evangelical past and all that.
Well, you'll get to see him in a week or so.
I know, and I actually sat next to him at a restaurant after a free thought convention in Kentucky one time, and we talked for a while, and I was kind of it was cool.
You were beside yourself.
I'm a fan. Yeah. He's totally going to remember me when I say hi to him. Yeah.
I bet.
I bet he is.
I bet he walks in saying, "Hey, is that guy Mason around here?"
Yeah, right. So the funniest part of deconversion, it's a little bit hypocritical, but I was in Nashville And to make a living, I'm playing piano at a church. It's not just to make a living. I still believe in this stuff, but I'm playing piano at a church. But that's when I'm doing this intellectual searching and rediscovery and learning. And I have an iPad full of books, right? And there's 3 services on Sunday morning, you see? And so piano players have to stay till the end because you got to play the music at the end of the service.
Oh yeah, the
you know,
invitation
the altar call,
and
the
oh
invitation.
yeah.
And you know that sort of sustained sound on the keyboard, that's called a pad, right? So the keyboard players would always joke, who has pad duty?
Okay.
Someone has to have pad duty at the end. So you got to stay till like 1:30 in the afternoon for that last service to end and play and do the pad duty at the end. So by this time I've heard the sermon twice already. So I'm just sitting backstage at the church reading on my iPad, and I'm reading The God Delusion by Richard Dawkins. I'm reading God Is Not Great. I'm reading Godless by Dan Barker.
Sure.
I'm reading all this stuff, and it's on my iPad, so no one knows.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I'm figuring this out.
Yeah.
But at a certain point, I started to be really on the other side of things.
Sure.
And I'm still right there. And
Right.
I'm like, this is going to be a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I mean, you got your hands on some good material.
Yes.
And people that make good arguments and explore the topics very well. So I can't say you got your hands on misinformation or
No, these are some good stuff.
It really was. Yeah. They still are. I've probably got a few of those around here somewhere. I know Hitchens' book is in here somewhere.
Yep.
And there's a few Sam Harris, I think.
Yeah, there's the moral landscape. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So walking away from that community, right? One of the big things that we often hear when people walk away from their religion is they lost their sense of community, their friends, their, your family. Have you discussed any of this with your family? How did you find community outside of religion? I'm curious about all those things.
Well, the first thing that was going to be really hard, I got out of it pretty well. So I was making probably 1/3 to 1/2 of my money from playing at this church as I was deconverting very slowly. And I thought, this is going to get weird. And because there's lots of stories of that, like real hard breakups with your church family, right?
Yeah.
Or even with your church income.
Sure.
I avoided that because right around that time, I started getting more and more gigs in Nashville, leaving town on the weekends, and on the road, on the tour bus, and everything. So I just got these road gigs where I was literally gone 2/3 of the weekends. At least 2/3 of the weekend.
Doing these revivals and stuff.
No. At this point, I'm talking about in Nashville.
Okay.
Just like country music gigs.
Okay, secular gigs.
Secular stuff.
Okay.
And I was already kind of deconverting, and then all of a sudden I'm out every Sunday. So when people at church would ask, where you been? I could say, yeah, I got this really great gig, and I've been gone most of the weekends, and I miss you. And it was very true. I did miss everyone.
Sure.
But I never had to have the awkward, Mason, why are you not coming to church anymore conversation.
Right.
I never had to have it.
Yeah.
And I never, I don't know. I got off easy there, right? And so I did not have to have a breakup with my church income or a breakup with my church family because I was just pulled away by my career progressing.
Yeah, you had a gradual transition.
Yeah. And
both intellectually, financially, relationally.
Right.
In so many ways, you just kind of gradually moved.
But there was one time, like I had been on the road a year and a half or 2 at this point, and they called me to sub in one Sunday if I was available, and I was available that Sunday. So I went back to that same church and I played, and I had a great time, and it was great seeing everybody. But as I was playing and looking around, this is 2 years later, I was playing and I was looking around, and I was like, I'm not going to do this again. I'm not going to play piano at a church service as an unbeliever again.
Right.
It felt dishonest, felt manipulative. I knew that I was literally making the emotion happen to support a message that I no longer believed in. And so I made that choice, but I still didn't have a breakup conversation with
Sure.
anyone. I just said, that was really fun. Great seeing you. And then a few months later, they called me to do it again. Oh, I'm really sorry. I can't make it. And since then, I've never played a church gig since then, except I think of funerals and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
I've never played a church gig since then for that reason. And I've turned down a lot.
Sure. Have you had to have conversations with friends or family or what that expected the old Mason or
Right.
the believer Mason, and then you had to say, "Hey, I'm not in that place anymore"?
Right. Yeah, that's the other part of it. So the short answer is no. I never had to have a weird I've left the faith conversation with anyone
Okay.
because of just the way circumstances just led me. But I never felt driven for that. I have some atheist friends that they just wanted to tell everybody. They're ordering coffee from somebody for 30 seconds and they find a way to tell them that they're an atheist and they don't believe
Yeah.
anymore. And that's great and that's fine. That was not me. I was more like, I want to avoid these awkward conversations. I'd rather just talk about what we agree on than have a debate all the time.
Sure.
So I just kind of avoided it for a long time.
Okay.
My best friend kind of had a hunch and asked me about it, and we've never talked about it since. It's so weird. So he's my best friend. We grew up in that church together. We went to youth group. He's still my best friend. And at some point, he just called me out and says, I think you're an agnostic. And I said, yeah, I am. And we talked about it for 5 minutes. And this was like 12 years ago. And we've never talked about it since. So I'm kind of, there's part of me thinking, if he thinks that I'm going to burn in hell, then why aren't we talking about this?
Right.
But there's this other part. He actually very much still respects me as a person and respects the choice I've made and all of that. So that's one conversation. I proactively told my brother when we were camping one time.
Okay.
And he took it pretty well because he was never that sold out kind of Bible thumper that I was.
Yeah.
And he kind of has some skepticism, but he also really didn't like the A word. And the fact that I used the A word to describe myself when me and him were talking, he's like, it's one thing to have doubts and to kind of suspend your judgment and be a skeptic, but why you got to, use that word? I forget exactly what he said, but he felt like it was so alienating and also would be really hurtful for like my mom to hear that or something.
Sure.
And then finally my sister, she also kind of just could tell and asked me about it. And she was pretty receptive as well. So really the only weird conversations I've had is best friend, brother, sister. I still haven't directly talked to my mom about this or my wife's mom about this. And then my dad passed away a few years ago. We never talked about it. So
Okay.
Yep.
So you've been able to maintain all of your friendships, all of you've had no severed relationships over walking
Well,
away from your religion.
no, I haven't. But that church community that was so important to me, gosh, my whole life, all the way up through that church where I was reading on my iPad in the stairwell, I always had that church community. Once a week, if not twice a week, you see the same people. And
Yeah.
they're people that have common beliefs. And I was always the, hey, where are we going to lunch guy?
Yeah.
So I was always, these were my people and my friends that I moved away from, because I was traveling all the time. But this is how I discovered this Nashville community of kind of ex-evangelicals. Is a couple years into those road gigs that took me away from the church, I realized I'm lonely. I haven't had any close friendships directly sever because they found out I was a non-believer, but I'm just not going to church anymore. And
Yeah.
I miss everybody.
Yeah.
And is there anything like that for secular people? So I started Googling, and I discovered Sunday Assembly Nashville.
Sure.
So I went to Sunday Assembly Nashville. It was in October. I forget the year, maybe 2013 or 14. And the band was playing Ghostbusters. I thought, how cool is this? That I'm like going to this church and they're playing Ghostbusters, on a Sunday morning.
Right.
And there was a podcast host that was there kind of doing a live version of the podcast.
Yeah.
And it was a similar podcast to this about believers and their stories, like stories of deconversion and stories of atheism and all of that. And I started following his podcast. Well, he kind of had a Nashville community.
Okay.
So now I kind of joined that Nashville community. It was kind of Facebook based, but we met up in real life too.
Was this Cass?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, it was Cass and the Everyone's Agnostic podcast.
Yeah.
And through Cass, I met Dave Warnock, and I met all kinds of other people in Nashville. And this has really become that sort of church community for me. I don't go to Sunday assembly anymore, but
Sure.
I see these people at least once a month. We're very, very close knit. And you know what? We don't even talk about religion anymore.
Right.
It's hilarious because for a while, that's all we talked about is deconversion, history. You
Sure.
know? And now we just talk about our lives and we're just friends and we hang out,
Right.
play poker.
Right.
You know?
I mean, that's where you and I met, not at Sunday Assembly, though we've both gone.
Yeah.
But in the friendships that developed apart from that or sprung out of that, we both have mutual friends. And I guess a year or so ago, maybe we're in the same place at the same time. And I'm like, man, this Mason guy's pretty cool. I like him. I like his perspective. and next thing you know, we get to see each other a couple of times a month, and I'm thankful for it. But yeah, you're right. We never talk about religion or our journeys or any of that stuff. You know?
And I still love talking about it actually. And there's an event coming up that I'm sure there'll be lots of those topics. But with these people, we've just moved on from that.
Right?
We're just friends now. And I think it's sad that the church kind of has a monopoly on that community thing. The third place community where you're just automatically around this same group of people a few times a week. It's not your job and it's not your home family, but it's just this community. And when you give up that church community, it's a big void. It's a big loss. Yeah.
For anybody that's unfamiliar, the third place is everybody talks about you've got your work life, you've got your home life, and then you've got this other. That's the third place. And for a lot of people, that's church. And they get a lot of their community there. But it could just as easily be, a bowling league or a dart league or a sewing circle or, a book club, any of those other things,
Right.
But those third places are important for people because that's where you go to sometimes decompress from.
It's your village.
Yeah. And you decompress from the challenges of the first two places. You can blow off a little steam in that third place. So it becomes very, very valuable, know. Well, I'm thankful that one of my third places has you there, and so I hope that you'll come back and see us again and tell us more and more of your story. So I think we're going to take a little break, and maybe we'll have somebody else join us. We don't know. So,
Sounds good.
All right.